A year filled with tragedy and heartbreak. 5 officers in Indiana have made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty since January 1st.
52361 is 1042 for the final time.
Police departments across the state stunned and communities in mourning. Tonight, we pay tribute to those who have died and to those still working to protect and serve.
From Wish TV, this is a News 8 special honoring the fallen.
Good evening and welcome to this Wish TV special honoring the men and women killed on the job while serving as police officers right here in Indiana.
This has been a year like no other in recent memory. 5 times already this year, Indiana has come together to say goodbye to a fallen officer. We've watched the solemn tributes of the processions, the garrison flags, the final radio calls. But tonight, we want to remember the people behind the badges who had such an impact on our communities for years.
In March, Indiana State Police Master Trooper James Bailey was killed while trying to stop a vehicle during a chase on I-69 in DeKalb County. He was a cancer survivor who spent his life saving others, and his greatest joy was being a dad.
Bailey died a hero.
Master Trooper James Bailey was beloved in Garrett.
Once an Indiana State Trooper, always an Indiana State Trooper.
His funeral, where hundreds of people paid their final respects, was fittingly in the high school gym where he grew up.
When I look out today and see the vast number of people, it reminds me of just how amazing Bailey was.
He served with the Indiana State Police for more than 15 years. While on the force, he earned multiple awards for his service, a job he loved.
We had now fulfilled our childhood pact and our dream. We were Indiana State Troopers.
But his most beloved role was as a dad.
Sophia and Joseph, I hope you know that you are the best of your dad and mom, all wrapped in one.
Friends say his wife and children were his world.
And I hope all 3 of you always know you were the most important thing in his life.
Bailey survived cancer 3 times and never let it slow him down. Even when he was in pain, he persevered to protect all of us.
He was a trooper through and through. He held a thin blue line between good and evil. And Bailey, you held it to the end, brother.
Master Trooper Bailey was named ISP Trooper of the Year for the Fort Wayne District in 2012 and is missed dearly.
Deputy Assan Hacker served southern Indiana for a short time, but his death leaves a lesson that could save lives for many years to come. Hacker was still new to the Vanderburgh County Sheriff's Department in March, serving just a few months, when he died during training. The cause of his death turned out to be exertional sickling, an unusual but not unheard of health crisis that is most common in athletes who have sickle cell trait and suffer an episode during intense workouts or competition. When it happened to Deputy Hacker, he was working on defensive tactics at a facility in Evansville.
That he felt a calling to help people. He wanted to make a difference in our community. He wanted a fulfilling career where he could accompany his children in uniform to a career day and they'd be proud of him.
His death brought deep sadness, but also a new awareness about the dangers of exertional sickling. The department leaders pledged to make changes to make those with sickle cell trait safer. Deputy Assan Hacker was only 33 years old. He leaves behind a wife, 4 sons, and a health lesson that could help countless others.
Trooper Aaron Smith was a young husband. He lived a life of service with so many more promising years ahead of him.
Just 33 years old, Trooper Smith had already accomplished so much. A member of the National Guard and for the past 4.5 years, an Indiana State Trooper and a husband to his wife, Megan.
I've thought about Aaron's life and his service to his country and fellow human beings. It made me ask, how much more could have been done on earth for others if his life had lasted 80 or 90 years?
His final act of bravery on June 28th, Smith raced to get ahead of a high-speed chase in Plainfield, running into the highway to lay down stop sticks. Now, a family and community mourn the loss of a loved one and the life that could be.
It was one of the most beautiful yet gut-wrenching experiences of my lifetime. Megan even made the comment that she knows where Aaron is. She does not even think he would want to come back. She does not think he would want to come back because he is now in the presence of God.
Smith received both military and police honors, and also rests alongside his fellow heroes at Crown Hill Cemetery.
Sergeant Heather Glenn served Tell City for 20 years with the Tell City Police Department and Perry County Sheriff's Office.
Our police department suffered a tremendous loss. We've lost a dear colleague, a dear friend. Sergeant Glenn is, she's a cornerstone of our department.
A cornerstone built on legacy.
Heather had the opportunity to work alongside her father, Sergeant Bob Glenn. I recall the earlier days of my career as I too worked alongside Sergeant Bob Glenn, and I had the opportunity to see Heather literally walking in her father's footsteps.
A legacy that ended earlier this month. Glenn was shot to death on duty while protecting a domestic violence victim at Perry County Memorial Hospital. Her death marks the first ever Tell City officer to be killed in the line of duty.
There's no greater love than a person that would lay down their life for another. Tell City Police Department Sergeant Heather James Glenn. Tell City 338, 1042. She has gone home now for the final time.
Memories of our most recent fallen hero struck a similar theme. Most remembered a smile, warm and compassionate, a friend to everyone with a sense of humor. Marion County Deputy John Durham's end of watch fell on July 10th in an attack by an inmate.
There are those who knew his life.
He lived life to the fullest. He treated everybody with respect, the inmates, to the people he worked with, to our family. He was a great man.
Those who knew his work.
I always saw a uniqueness in him being able to handle people that were at a bad place in life, and I think that's what all law enforcement officers inspire to be.
And those who knew his passions.
The times your father and I crossed paths, all he could talk about was the joyful glee he had in his boys, in his family.
John Durham spent 38 of his 61 years with the Marion County Sheriff's Office as someone colleagues call an unsung hero.
He has gone home for the final time.
He worked directly with inmates and out of the public's view. Best known as a proud father of 4 sons, loved ones say Durham instilled his own love of activity as a 5-sport athlete at Lawrence North High School, turned avid Pacers fan, hunter, and fisherman. There are those who knew, and now those who live to carry a legacy.
We all miss you so much. We always will.
At least 49 members of the Indiana State Police have died in the line of duty since 1933. Their names are etched on the official Indiana State Police Memorial. It's located at the State Police Post on Post Road in Indianapolis and includes an eternal flame that burns in their memory. This year has been especially hard on state police. One of the things I talked about with Superintendent Doug Carter. You've lost 2. How has life been since then?
Sad. It's the first word that comes to my mind. Most of us in this business are fixers, and we can't fix that. We can't fix this. So when James Bailey was killed on March the 3rd, Bo Stevens back in October the 9th of 2017, and then June 28th with Aaron Smith, it changes us for sure. There's no question about that.
Do you remember a time where we have grieved this much and lost this much so quickly when it comes to those who serve?
We lost 3 troopers in 90 days back in 1999. I believe it was in 1999. But you know, we can't compartmentalize any one. It's the totality of what's happened. Heather Glenn, Tell City, during the same period of time, July 2nd of this year. We've accepted that risk and that responsibility, but a part of us dies every single time it occurs, and that's just the reality. We're human. We're expected to be something other than that, but we're human, and it offers us time to reset a bit too, to realize the magnitude of what it is we do, what you've chosen to do, inherently dangerous, high speed, highly critical no matter what you do. But they still go out and they still do it, and they volunteer to put themselves in harm's way and ultimately to give their own lives for the lives of others. What greater calling is there? I don't think there is one. I don't think there is one. So I'm a lucky guy. I'm sad, I'm broken, but I am a lucky, lucky guy to get to represent such consummate professionals in all they do. And I think we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. This period of time over the course of the last 3 years and a few months has given us an opportunity to completely flush ourselves out. And I'm proud of the Indiana State Police and what they've done to do that.
When it comes to the funeral services and all of the traditions that we get a chance to see from the outside looking in, that takes so much coordination.
It does.
And organization, and it's all about honoring the fallen. Is there any part of that in these last, few, especially with the two that you've lost this year, that gets you every time? Is there any part of that tradition of that ceremony that really is an extra reflective moment for you?
Boy, I'll tell you, certainly taps and the 21 gun salute and the carriage and the horse but probably most importantly to me is that 20, 25, 30 seconds where I present a flag to a spouse. It's brutal. I can't imagine what she's thinking, and I can't help her. I just can't help her. We spend a lot of time, and we have people that have built the structure by which we plan line of duty death funerals, and they are so incredibly committed because it's a 24/7 responsibility from the time it occurs. Before I even got to Eskenazi Hospital on June the 28th, that planning had already begun. Unbelievable. The relationship with IMPD on the 28th, unbelievable. I walked out the doors of Eskenazi Hospital talking about process, and I walked out with her and my wife and my daughter, and I looked out and there's 15 or 16 IMPD motorcycles waiting for us in the Sally Port. They came in on their own time. Unbelievable. So those are the kinds of things that we have to not only memorialize, but we have to appreciate. I said something earlier, and this is really important to me. The procession with Aaron Smith to Crown Hill Cemetery. If anybody thinks now's not a good time to be in this business, they are so wrong. They need to look at the video of that procession with the moms and the dads and workers and cars that were stopped and held for an hour and a half or 2 hours at an intersection. Again, IMPD took care of all that for us. But the people that were out there to pay tribute and show appreciation for his life and his service, it was unbelievable. It was remarkable to see little kids with their hands on their hearts and trying to salute, or a sole individual step out of his car and walk up to an American flag and stand at attention all by himself. Nobody around, nobody seeing. But I was able to see it somewhere near the Garrison flag. It makes your heart warm, and that's the kind of thing we're missing in this world.
It was interesting walking up here because I saw the sign. It was like brass faces, and the faces of all of these human beings that wanted to serve
and give their life. Yeah.
When you walk past that, are there any days where you're like, man, I just don't want to see another face on this?
So when we're outside the door here, and it's a sacred place. And when I first came into this role 10.5 years ago, I didn't want to add any names to that board, and I have not been so fortunate. But yes, they'll live in an immortal way, and when I think I'm having a bad day, I just go out there and stand for a while. I'm having a pretty good day.
It's something to me. I remember the first time I lost someone, just anybody. It's a very unnatural feeling to lose anyone, right?
It is.
Then when you see the memorial, and you see their face, and you see the flowers around the wreath, and you see them, and you think about legacy. You talked about them basically being immortal. Yeah. What legacy do you hope that stands, especially since we've lost these beautiful souls, and there will probably be more in the future because that's just how life goes? What do you hope the legacy is for anyone?
That we never forget them, And every single year in 15 places around Indiana, at 14 of our posts, and once at General Headquarters down at our hangar in Greenwood, we do memorialize them, and we talk about them. We talk about how they died. And it's an absolute ceremony that goes the same way every single time. We read about them. We actually read from a script who they were, what, and how they died. And it's amazing to see the surviving family members that come, and some of them that have died or were killed 30, 40, 50 years ago. They still come to those. So that's the best thing that we can do for those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice and given their life, is to perpetually remember their service. And that's what we'll do.
Quiet time is hard. In your quiet time, what do you struggle with the most in regards to the fallen?
You know, I'm not ashamed to tell you that I could close my eyes and cry like a little boy when I think about what my eyes have seen over the course of my career. But what I try and focus on is those that remain. And those widows that I've come to know and come to love and respect and admire so very much. The young kids that are now stepping into the role of a father. The parents that lost a child. You see, they'll exist, but they'll never live the same way. And it's our job to make sure that they know they have a safety net around them. And that's what I think about. What am I missing? What do I need to do? I don't want to inconvenience them. Maybe my face reminds them of a very terrible day. Maybe my voice, maybe those messages, those text messages. So I'm very, very careful about that. But I'm always evaluating myself and trying to identify what it is that I could do that I'm not, to take good care of them.
One of the heroes buried at Crown Hill Cemetery is Officer Jake Laird.
His death in 2004 stunned Indianapolis, and nearly 20 years later, it's remarkable to see how this community can really rally around the families that experienced this even years later. Our Cody Fisher spent time with Jake's parents.
This was the scene in August 2004 as the procession carrying Officer Jake Laird's body went under the garrison flag downtown, just days after he was killed in the line of duty.
It was the first officer killed in Indianapolis in 16 years. So everything was kind of new for the people that were there.
Fast forward to this month, Jake's parents thanking officers cycling in his memory, riding near the site where he was buried.
We were both in a daze. It took Deb and I maybe a week to realize Jake was gone.
Laird's parents, Mike and Debbie, say the outpouring of support from the community was hard to wrap their brains around.
It's like they just wrapped their arms around us.
They were also supported by a group that nobody wants to join, surviving family of law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty.
And I call it a family. They've adopted us and put us in that family. The family knows. They keep us in their thoughts all the time.
In the years since his death, the Laird family says they have tried to focus on the positive things that have come from his passing. And one of those is the number of stickers for the Jake Laird Memorial Fund that were sold to raise money for his daughter.
People would come back from vacation and they'd been in Florida and they'd say, "We saw a Jake sticker in Florida," or wherever they were. So they were well circulated.
How did that make you guys feel in that time?
Honored. Honored for Jacob.
Another positive that came from his death, the Jake Laird Law, Indiana's red flag law allowing officers to seize and keep firearms from mentally unstable or dangerous people. A law that could have saved Jake's life if it was in effect in 2004.
It's something good that came from Jake's death, even though, of course, it's not worth it to us, but nevertheless, something good came out of it. And there have been many, many good things that came because he passed away, but that's a big one.
And in the absence of actually having him physically present and here, there's at least solace in the fact that good has come from it.
Oh, sure.
Keeps his memory alive.
And it's a healing for us. As we see good things come because of his death, it helps us too.
The Laird family is heartbroken every time an officer is killed in the line of duty.
Just pray for the officers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, every day they're out there risking their lives to try to keep the general public safe, to keep all of us safe. And, you know, they face unbelievable things on the streets that nobody ever hears about.
Jake Laird was one of 5 Indianapolis police officers killed in the line of duty since 2004. The most recent, Officer Breanne Leaf. She was killed 3 years ago, April of 2020, responding to a domestic violence call. I sat down with IMPD Chief Randall Taylor, who told me the death of any officer has a tremendous impact on his department.
It's difficult, but all of them are difficult. You know, we're all, whether it's the IMPD family or just law enforcement family as a whole, you feel it every time. There's a website I go to pretty much every day that I work, Officer Down, and it'll tell you of the deaths, whether it's because of vehicle crashes or shootings or whatever. Anytime an officer dies as part of a duty-related function, it tells you about it. And every time you just kind of sit back and think, man, this is tough. Even though some of them are from, you know, California or wherever, you still have that allegiance to family.
Has this year been especially more difficult?
Yeah, it does. You know, I think as a whole, officer deaths are probably down a little bit, but we've had 3 in quick succession. You know, we had the trooper, Trooper Smith, and then we had the sergeant out of Tell City, and then we also had Deputy Durham, who I knew personally. So it just seems like they're coming more and more, and all of those, of course, are unnecessary. It's bad enough when you have an officer that's killed as part of a traffic accident. Those things happen, but these were all incidences where they were targeted.
What do you tell the members of IMPD, and how do you deal with it from that perspective?
Well, you know, you're in law enforcement for any period of time. You know that this is a danger. This is a potential consequence of the job. And most of my officers, really all of them that I've come in contact with, do a great job with it. They feel the loss just like anyone would. I mean, we're no different than anyone in the community. We grieve, we get discouraged or sometimes depressed about different things that have happened. But they're an amazing group of people who are willing to put their lives on the line, and I think because they do that day in and day out, they understand probably a little bit better. No one likes it, but it's just one of those things that we know comes with the job, and because of that, I think they're kind of somewhat prepared for it. Now, I said the first time I went to an officer's funeral, if I never go to another one, it'll be too soon. But I've been to a number of them since making that statement, and it doesn't get any easier every time you go through it.
How has it changed over the years from when you started in law enforcement to maybe now? I would imagine it's a lot easier now to have conversations in regards to your feelings and your mental health than it was, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, so this is my 36th year in law enforcement. And I certainly remember starting, and you know, at that time, whenever you dealt with either an officer being killed or if you had to shoot somebody, it was always suck it up, you know, and you weren't, at that time, cops weren't supposed to be seen crying. You weren't supposed to really deal with it. And unfortunately, we saw the tragedies that came along with that. Officers sometimes took their own lives, you know, as a consequence of not really being able to share their feelings and their emotions. But you're right, things have changed over the years. And I think one of the biggest changes, like with wellness programs like what we have, whenever our officers are involved in an officer-involved shooting or a critical incident, not only is myself and my executive staff usually in contact with those officers, but we have a wellness division that comes out and takes care of them as well. And they're encouraged to talk. And I think I felt that probably the most when we were dealing with FedEx. And even though that was an officer-related shooting, there was a lot of death there. I was out with those families for a lot of hours and saw what they were going through and knew what my officers were going through when they first, you know, went in to try to stop that shooter. So I encouraged all of them to get the help, be willing to talk to people, whether it's ministers or family members. I mean, I shared my personal story with that. My wife and I talked, and I just broke down. I had to, and she was a huge help. But I encourage them, find that person or find that group, find that avenue, that path that you can take to make sure you're getting taken care of emotionally and mentally.
Indiana has recorded the second highest amount of police deaths among states so far this year. That's according to the National Law Enforcement Memorial Fund. The group operates the National Law Enforcement Memorial and Museum in Washington, D.C. The memorial contains the names of more than 23,000 officers who have died in the line of duty, all the way back to 1786. Our Cody Fisher had the chance to speak to the group's interim CEO.
Now, Bill, when you speak with the families of officers who have died in the line of duty, what do they tell you about the work that you guys do and what it means to them?
The families who come to the memorial, it's almost impossible to put into words the experience that they have when they come and see their loved ones' names inscribed to, again, our very sacred walls. The healing that goes on here, the catharsis, the camaraderie, the partnership, the coming together to being surrounded by other people who to some degree know what it is you're going through. Police officers and the community come together and recognize this very sacred space and offer it as a sort of singular point of focus to say to the nation, to say to all of those who have lost someone, that we remember, that we care, that we will never forget, and we will always, always honor the sacrifice of your loved one. There's a quote on our very sacred walls by a survivor. It says, "It's not how these officers died that made them heroes, it's how they lived." So to a very big degree, that sentiment flows through all those who come to the memorial and certainly at the vigil to recognize that it's not just the men and women whose names are inscribed on our walls, but we view all men and women in law enforcement as heroes. Again, not because of actions that might lead to their death, but because of the actions they choose to make every single day to put that uniform on and go out and help protect people that are otherwise strangers to them. They run towards the danger as others are running away. So we view them all as heroes.
Thank you for watching this Honoring the Fallen special.
We also want to take a moment to thank the men and women who wake up each and every day with a single mission to keep our community and our state safe.
You can watch this full special on wishtv.com.
Have a great rest of your day.